secondhand smoke, diabetes, being obese or overweight, high cholesterol, unhealthy diet, a diet that may be low in potassium, and too much alcohol, as well as physical inactivity. Factors that cannot be modified or are difficult to control include family history of high blood pressure, race or ethnicity, age, gender, chronic kidney disease, obstructive sleep apnea, and even our socioeconomical status and psychosocial stresses. These are all risk factors that affect our blood pressure. A study conducted by the InterSalt Cooperative Research Group showed that the higher the regular consumption of sodium in a given population, the stronger the average blood pressure increase with age and the prevalence of hypertension. Hypertension makes the heart work too hard, and the high force of blood flow can harm arteries and organs. Uncontrolled high blood pressure can raise the risk of heart attack, heart failure, stroke, kidney disease, and blindness. In addition, blood pressure generally rises as we get older, so limiting our sodium intake becomes more important each year. After conducting a review on sodium research, the Institute of Medicine concluded that reducing sodium intake lowers blood pressure. It is clear that high blood pressure is a leading cause of cardiovascular disease. It accounts for 2/3 of all strokes and half of all heart disease. In China, high blood pressure is the leading cause of preventable death and responsible for more than 1 million deaths per year. There may be a genetic component to salt intake, as people respond differently to lower sodium intakes. Those who are what we call salt sensitive experience the greatest blood pressure reduction after following a reduced sodium diet. Those who are salt resistant do not experience these changes, even with significant decreases or increases, but studies have found that women more than men, people older than 50, African Americans, and those with a higher starting blood pressure respond the greatest to sodium decreases. However, there is not yet enough evidence to make a strong conclusion about specific groups who may be salt resistant versus salt sensitive. So the overall evidence supports a benefit of limiting sodium intake for everyone. In the next few slides, we will cover a few disease outcomes related to hypertension. Our goal is to educate and encourage you to take action to prevent and or reduce or reverse any of these effects you may have been diagnosed with or are at risk for. So what exactly is a heart attack? A heart attack occurs when the blood that brings oxygen to the heart muscle is severely reduced or stopped. This happens because coronary arteries that supply the heart with blood can slowly become thicker and harder from a buildup of fat, cholesterol, and other substances called plaque. This slow process is known as atherosclerosis. If the plaque breaks open and a blood clot forms that blocks the blood flow, a heart attack occurs. High blood pressure is the biggest cause of stroke because it can cause a block of blood flow. A stroke happens when blood flow cannot get to your brain. There are two main kinds of strokes, ischemic and hemorrhagic. An ischemic stroke is the most common type and happens when blood flow to the brain is blocked. A hemorrhagic stroke happens when a blood vessel in the brain ruptures. This can be caused by uncontrolled blood pressure, an aneurysm, or a birth defect. Even if the blocked blood flow does not cause a stroke, it can affect parts of the brain responsible for speech, vision, hearing, movement, coordination, sleep, memory, and emotion. If the blood flow is not improved, the damage can be permanent. Decreased blood flow supply affects memory and stops one from thinking clearly. It can lead to vascular dementia, which occurs when vessels that supply blood to the brain become blocked or narrowed. It also affects our eyes. Eyes and vision can be affected by high blood pressure. Hypertension can cause those blood vessels in the retina, the back of the eye where images focus, to be damaged. This eye disease is known as hypertensive retinopathy and can be very dangerous if not treated. Blocked blood flow can also damage the optic nerve, leading to bleeding within your eye or even vision loss. Chronic kidney disease shares risk factors with cardiovascular disease, with high blood pressure being a major risk factor for both. Salt sensitivity is reported to be more prevalent in patients with chronic kidney disease due to a reduced ability to excrete sodium, which may lead to increased blood pressure. So how does this work? Why are people with high blood pressure at risk for kidney disease? When the vessel gets clogged, the kidneys don't get enough oxygen and nutrients, which are carried in the blood and struggle to filter waste from the body. Included in the waste is excess sodium. This sodium accumulates and blood pressure can rise. The body may try to remedy this by activating systems which cause an increase in heart rate and, yes, blood pressure to get more blood to the kidneys. This becomes a vicious cycle that can lead to kidney failure. High blood pressure can also hit you below the belt. Hypertension is likely to lead to excess urination, as it's associated with extra fluid in your body. This in turn can result in your body getting rid of too much calcium, an element that is important for your bones and your bone strength. If calcium is in short supply in the blood, it can leach out of the bones. So a diet high in sodium could have an additional unwanted effect, the bone thinning disease called osteoporosis. Unfortunately, this excess calcium in the urine can also combine with oxalate to form calcium oxalate stones, a common form of kidney stones. Excess urination leads to loss of electrolytes, which can affect the myocardium function of the heart. And moreover, reduced blood flow to the genitals can lead to erectile dysfunction. Cancer research also shows that a higher intake of salt and sodium or salty snacks is linked to an increase in stomach cancer. The World Cancer Research Fund and American Institute of Cancer Research concluded that salt, as well as salted and salty foods, are a probable cause of stomach cancer. So how do we begin to reduce sodium intake? Being aware of the foods that we are purchasing is a big part of that. Labeling on packages can be helpful. Sometimes you'll notice on the front of a package, it may say very low in sodium or low in sodium. Did you know that these have specific meanings? When something says that it is salt or sodium free, that means that it has less than 5 milligrams of sodium per serving. When something says very low sodium, it means it has 35 milligrams of sodium or less per serving. Low sodium foods will have 140 milligrams or less. These are all labels worthwhile looking for. Labels that read like reduced sodium don't have quite the same meaning reduced or light or lightly salted. They simply give us a percentage of the original food input. So if the original food was excessively salty, being 25% less or 50% less may not support your health goals. We often like to find things that say no salt added or unsalted. These are the best. Flipping over our food products is always the best place to find the nutritional facts. On the back, there is a requirement to have the amount of sodium listed. As you go down that nutritional label, you'll see on this label, it says 0 milligrams. And then next to that, you'll have the daily value. If that daily value is 5% or less, we consider that a low sodium food. 10% or less, we consider it to be a medium. And 20% or higher is a high sodium food that we may want to pass on. So how do we taste salt, and why do we enjoy salt so much in our foods? Well, our tongues are designed with 5 taste buds: salty, bitter, sour, umami, and sweet. And these help us to sense the taste of foods in our mouth. It's our olfactory glands related to our nose that help us to sense flavor. And combined, wow, we can get a burst of flavor from our food. Let's go to the kitchen and see how we can add flavor without salt. We'll start with looking at some caramelized onions, pickled onions, maple mustard Brussels sprouts, and some pumpkin spice oatmeal cookies to finish it off with a little bit of sweet. All right, let's start with our first flavor.
Umami is the taste sensation that is produced by several amino acids and nucleotides. And it has a rich, meaty flavor, characteristic of cheese or cooked meat or mushrooms. We can get it from soy or ripened tomatoes. And today in the kitchen, we're going to start with caramelizing some onions. Caramelizing onions intensifies the flavor and helps to add more of that umami tastiness to our dishes. So here we just have some sliced onions. The pan was sprayed lightly with some extra virgin olive oil. We have a little bit of pepper in there, and we just are beginning to cook them down to intensify the flavors. We're going to use them to build a power bowl that's full of flavor without added salt. I, of course, love that when I prepare one thing, I can use it for multiple dishes. So this is fun to add to a hummus. And there was a recipe that I flashed up there for you a little while ago, a caramelized onion hummus that you could use for dipping vegetables, for snacking, or even in a bowl. So today I have a bowl of brown rice mixture with lentils and wild rice, and this is going to be the base of my bowl. And then we're going to take all of these other yummy flavors and add to it to continue to build and layer the flavors that we have and want. So the rice should be cooked in a no salt added broth to add some more flavors to it, so that when we get to the end of our dish, we're not missing that salt as much. So here's my rice. We're going to add to it some of these yummy caramelized onions. And now we're starting to build that umami. Let's talk about some other flavors. How about sour? Adding sour balances and makes it more enjoyable while reducing, again, the amount of salt that we need. So finishing a dish with something like balsamic vinegar, or a little sprinkle of Parmesan cheese, or a squirt of lemon. Have you ever used lemon zest? I have some lemon zest here today that I'm going to use, and I'm going to sprinkle it on some steamed broccoli. Salt-free, I can use as much as I like. But now when I take this broccoli and add it to my bowl, I've got more layers of flavor. And I should have used my tongs here. All right, looks like we've got a good bowl building here. Some other things that add that sour are things like mustard. Mustard is often a hidden ingredient in many things. It serves as an emulsifier as well as adding that sour balance to many of our dishes. All right, next up, let's talk about bitter. Why would anyone want to add something bitter to our food? Well, we know that bitter vegetables contain many phytonutrients that we want and we need for our body. Today, we're using Brussels sprouts. And I have some roasted Brussels sprouts, and we have a lovely honey mustard glaze to go on them. So these were just roasted, and as you can see the little specks on there, we've got some red pepper in there to add a little bit of a spice. And again, when we use things like peppers or horseradish, we don't miss having the salt. We're focusing on different taste buds. So here we go, some honey mustard. And we'll add these to our bowl as well. All right, and so for that salty, have you ever made a dish and it just needs a little bit more salt? I've got some pickled onions today. These are pickled in vinegar. They have a little bit of sugar on them, and it just really adds a nice finishing pop to our dishes. And color. Look at that color. Now, a meal would never be finished without having a little something sweet. So here we go. To finish off our meal, today we have a pumpkin spice oatmeal cookie, which to me is good any time of year. We love having these. They make the place smell good. They make those endorphins in our brain really get excited. And there's not actually a lot of sugar or salt in these cookies. People often have questions about salt and the differences in salt. And so I brought a few today to talk about. So here, all the way on our left, we have some finishing salt. Finishing salt has very large crystals, and chefs often use that to finish off a dish. That big crystal kind of hits your tongue, and it's a really big flavor, but it doesn't really get spread out through the whole dish. Next, we have a kosher salt, which is also would be kind of the next size down in granulars. And so when using kosher salt on a spoon, often people will say that there's less sodium in it. And it's not that there's less sodium, it's that you actually get less on the spoon. So if you have a recipe that calls for a finer salt and you're or a kosher salt and you're switching to a finer salt, you want to use less. Here we have a Himalayan salt that you grind and would come out ground and fine. We have what's called a real salt. Both of these would have minerals and nutrients in them, and people often ask, oh, is it better if I use Himalayan or real salt? The reality is you would have to eat so much of it to get those nutrients and minerals, and our job is to reduce the amount of salt that we're taking in. Finally, we have regular table salt or iodinized salt, which is also very fine. So the biggest difference I want you to know about these is that based on how fine the granular is, you may need to use less salt. So if you already have dishes that are set for regular salt and you start using a kosher salt, you're going to get less sodium. As a rule of thumb, we like to start with at least half of the amount of sodium that a dish calls for, and then begin to use other things to enhance flavors and continue to decrease the amount of sodium that we use from there. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure sharing with you strategies to reduce your sodium.
Thank you so much, Bettina, for that wonderful presentation. And thank you everyone who joined us today. I don't know about anybody else, but I am starving. That food looks amazing, and it's just fun to learn new ways of how we can flavor our food without adding salt. Um, so yeah, thank you, Bettina, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us today. And just a few quick
Oh,
reminders
my onions.
for everybody as you continue on your Plant
Oh,
Power
there we go.
Challenge journey. We hope you're enjoying this week's nutrition challenge and trying new recipes full of fiber and plant proteins. If you know someone who would enjoy this webinar from today, it's not too late to sign up for the Plant Power Challenge either. They'll get all the past content right away sent to their email. Celebrate your efforts as you keep planting seeds for long-term health with thousands of others who are on this journey with you. And thanks again for being here today. It was great to have everybody here and to learn about how to flavor our food without adding salt.